Hello, my name is Patricia Austin, and I am the board president of the Wytheville Training School and Cultural Center. The Wytheville Training School and Cultural Center was not always the Wytheville Training School and Cultural Center. It was called the Wytheville Training School. And after many years of students getting an education, a segregated education in this facility, we are now at the point where it is not only the Wytheville Training School and Cultural Center, it is the home of the African American Heritage Museum. So welcome. We have a goal and a mission to keep history alive. Today in the African American Heritage Heritage Museum. You know, this is an important part of our history. History is a tapestry of who we are. And as we begin to interview the next 4 candidates who will tell their story and keep history alive, you will see how important it is for us to share with you those that have come before us and those who will come after us, making a huge impact on our community. Thank you.
Far away, I dreamed a dream one day, and now that dream is here beside me. Long the skies were overcast, but now the clouds have passed. You're here at last. Chills run up and down my spine. Aladdin's lamp is mine. The dream I dreamed was not denied me. Just one look and then I knew that all I longed for long ago was you. Chills run up and down my spine. Aladdin's lamp is mine. The dream I dreamed was never denied me. One look and then I knew that all I longed for long ago was you. That all I longed for long ago. One look and then I knew that all I longed for long ago was you.
Welcome to the Wytheville Training School and Cultural Center. My name is Patricia Austin, and I am the board president of this prestigious organization. At this time, we'd like to take this opportunity to share with you why we believe it's so important to keep history alive. You know, many of us know that we have different pieces of history from our childhood or passed down from our parents and maybe even our grandparents of history that impacted our community. The intention of this project is to share tidbits of information, history that impacted our community. As you can see from the scan of the room, some of the history that we are going to be talking about today. This project seeks to highlight 5 individuals who are sharing a bit of history about the community, all of which in one way or the other are connected to the Wytheville Training School and Cultural Center. What you just saw in that small bit of a scan is a little bit of information about the Scott Memorial Hornets and that absolutely fabulous championship that occurred in 1962. Today, it is my pleasure to share with you interviews from 5 different individuals, one of which was a student at the Wytheville Training School and Cultural Center, another gentleman who had the opportunity to play under Coach Ernest Smith and became a coach himself. We're going to share with you some information that touches on that era when we talked about big bands and how they united communities. And of course, whenever we speak about our community and the interaction, there's always an opportunity to share lessons learned from the legal system. We're going to share two of those. One that has to do with a gentleman who was arrested, who was not only arrested, but was sentenced 40 years for 8 ounces of marijuana. A long time ago, but it happened, and it impacted our community. The other aspect is a little bit different. It's all about love. You know, we think about the Lovings case, the couple that got married in Washington, D.C. and moved so happily to Virginia to start their life together. And when they came to Virginia, they weren't greeted very happily. They were arrested as an interracial couple. So we're going to hear stories just like that happened in our community. And we want to share them with you because it is important to keep history alive. So this is phase 1 of the project, and we will be doing more of those type of interviews because it's important that we learn from the lessons of the past and bring things forward to the future so that as we're sharing with our children, our grandchildren, they too will be able to understand how valuable history is. Those nuggets are a tapestry of who we are. Thank you, and we'll get to our interviews. Today, it is my pleasure to be able to interview one of the students that was at the Wytheville Training School and had an outstanding education experience. So today I have Ms. Louise Crockett, and I'm going to ask her to state her name as well as the city and state that she lives in. Ms. Crockett?
I'm Louise Crockett, and the city I lived in now is Wytheville, Virginia.
Thank you, Ms. Crockett. Thank you for giving us that information. Ms. Crockett, it's my understanding that you were a student here at the Wytheville Training School, really had a wonderful education experience. Can you share some of your experiences while you were here at the Wytheville Training School?
Well, most of all, it was a home away from home, and the teachers was wonderful, and there's one in particular that I liked it. And I dearly loved her, and that was Miss Walker. And she taught us so much, and we learned so much from them. And they always seemed that we had the right clothes on, and we looked presentable. Even when we came in the mornings, we were taught to put our fingers, the hands on the desk, and they would inspect our fingers to see if we were
well-groomed,
really clean, and we always had to have a handkerchief. and we always sang Miracle of the Beauty, and we did our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, and we did it the first thing in the mornings, and it was just wonderful to be able to come and be happy, you know. And maybe you might have not liked the teacher, but you knew that they were teaching you, and you were to learn what they were teaching you. I became a good student. I had a good grade, and my report card was good, and it was always excellent. And they praised me for that. And the big praise when you're young makes you want to do more. And we would come in the mornings. We would go from one grade to the next grade, and we had different teachers that would teach us different. And when we on Fridays, we would have talent shows, and all the kids would come out that had talent. And there was one that talked, and she was Lucille Miller, and she would talk and about her was always Frederick Douglass, and then she had it was the one that he's a poet, and she would read his poems, and she would talk and go through the emotions and everything. It was always delightful. And then we had two students that sang, and one was Margaret Younger, and my cousin Robert Sessom, and they would always win prizes when we went to the theater. We went to the Millward Theater once a year, and that was the only time that you got to sit downstairs, and the people were on the stage, and we did that. It was exciting though. When I was we would always have to have our notebooks and our papers and our pens and things, and we had to have read it on time. We had books we read books that was given to us. And I remember there was a Saturday Evening Post that we were given to us that came from the white high school. And they were all raggedy, and of course we didn't appreciate it, but we looked through them because we didn't have any choice. And then the books was all raggedy that we had. They were raggedy books, and they would come from the other school, the white schools. And of course we weren't able to participate with nothing that they did. And it was always we were together, blacks, no whites. And we had a teacher that came, and she taught us Bible. She was a Bible school teacher. And she would come once a week, and she would teach us Bible. We would have Bible studies, and they were good Bible studies, because I still remember some of the verses in Psalms that she would teach us. And then we would have a program at the end of the year, and it was all the grades would be on the program, and we would have little crepe paper costumes, and we would be dressed like little different flowers and tulips, and we would sing our little songs, and it was fun to do that. And then we had a lady that came, a sister to a teacher that came, and she came from Virginia State, and she taught dancing, and she came once a year. Whenever she came through to see her sister, she would always come to visit the school, and she would teach us dancing. We did dances, and she was real good. I got a compliment on my hands. They don't look that way now, but she told me I had pretty hands, and so that made me feel like I wanted to do something.
Right.
Really wanted to dance. And we walked from the school here. We would go to the lunch to have lunch at the Franklin Street Church, and we had lunch in the basement. And then later on, we went down to this. We had to walk a block to go down to eat lunch, and we would go to it. It was owned by Bill Ellison, and we would go there. And later on, that's where we had lunch. And then later on, we would have home economics classes there. And Miss Jones, she taught home ec, and it was interesting because she taught us how to make beds, and then we had sewing classes, and that was one of the things that I enjoyed doing and learning was to sew and make things. So each one of us had to make something to wear, and I made a little vest, and I wore that little vest for a long time. And then after we got into high school, and it was different. It was different because we had to change classes, and we had to sit. Before we had our personal seats, desks that we sat at, and then we moved over into the other part of the school, and that's when we had to have a partner that sat with you, those double bed, and it wasn't too good because it wasn't comfortable, and sometimes the person you sit with, they weren't very nice, but we made it through it, and we had a stage. At one time, the school had a stage, and we used the stage for the classroom too, and that's where Mr. Harmon taught us, and on the stage, so we taught us, and the windows was right even with the stage. The windows came right up to the stage, and I remember we would play little tricks, and when they went to get gas for the bus, and that would be at lunchtime, and we would sneak off and get on that bus, and they never knew we was gone because we could go out that window and walk right on out that window. And I remember the bus driver was George Austin, and he would always he would take us. He wouldn't tell us we couldn't go. So we would go over to now there's the Heritage Center. That's where the museum is, and that's where the oil, where he got his gas from and his oil. And then we would come back, and they never knew we was gone. And we did little tricks and things we shouldn't have done, but we enjoyed it. And the teachers they disciplined for them. They got us. We got a punishment. And I remember getting because I missed the words in my reading, and if you missed the words, they had a paddle. They paddle your hands in your hands, and I remember I got that, and I was so embarrassed. And then the next time, the way it was that you would stand up and read, and you read from this little green and black book, and you had to. It was always a story, and the Mother Goose and all that, and the Bird Rabbit, and the little tar baby, and that was what we read, those stories, and you had to pronounce those words. And if you didn't pronounce those words, sometimes you had to stand until you did get those words. And I learned to read, and I think I read pretty well. I mean, because you had to read, and now children, they don't. We had the writing classes that you had to write courtesy writing, and you had to, and then you would go. I remember going around and around and around a circle, and then you had where it would teach you how to go up and down, and then finally they would teach you how to write that word, and we wrote that word, and that's now the kids don't even have courtesy writing, and they don't know how to write, and I think it's disgraceful, and it was time when prom time came. Everybody went over to the Bethel AME Church. We went there for one time. Once we changed around, and we went there, and then we went over to the Franklin Street. We would have our commencement at Franklin Street. Once they said the children we couldn't have, the year that I graduated, they told us that we had to have it in the mornings. And we knew that we couldn't have it in the mornings because our parents was all working and would nobody be there. And so I remember being president of the class, we took a petition around, and everybody had to sign a petition that we weren't going to participate, we couldn't participate, and we told them why. And they changed it, finally they changed it. I enjoyed being the president because it made me feel important. But then too, it was just something that you had accomplished, and and the kids liked you. I was sort of popular, I guess, because I got along with everybody, and it was always like brothers and sisters when we went to school. It wasn't like holding hands, like you see the kids holding hands and kissing. You didn't see that type of stuff. You just saw kids talking and having a good time together. And I remember when we used to get out for recess, we would go next door to the Grimm's, and over here on the corner where they have all these homes at now, it was nothing but a big field. And Dr. Grimm let us go over there for our recess to play. And then when we played, they had a ball team, and it was baseball. And we did that in the streets. And in the streets, most of the ones that did it was the ones from the country, that's what we said. Mm-hmm. But they was from Ivanhoe and Max Meadows. And when they had exercises, we had exercises twice a week. And we would go out here on the side of the right-hand side of the school is where we had exercises. And those exercises, it wasn't nothing but rocks. Our school ground was just rocks. There wasn't no grass at all. And in the back we had it's where you had the seesaws and the swings. And I remember this girl was on the seesaw with me, and she fell off, and she fell on my arm. And when she fell on my arm, it broke my arm. And that was a bad experience. But, it was wonderful being away from, you got to meet kids. And I remember when it was so cold, and we had a big old pot stove that sat in the big room. And we would say, either you get too hot or you could be cold. And then finally they moved it so that it would be out a little bit farther where the kids could get warmer. But the floors was made out of wood. The floors was wood, and they would oil them once in a while. They would get dusty, and they would put oil on them to kill the dust on the floors. And then it was sort of hard for us. We had to be careful how we came into the classroom. And I never liked that because it sort of had a smell or odor to it, and it wasn't very pleasant. But all in all, school was good. We had, at times when it wasn't bad, you understood why it wasn't as good as it should have been. But most of the time it was good. I remember the year that I graduated, Mr. Harmon got the Wings Over Jordan to come. That was a big gospel group that came all around the world, and they sang every place. And how he got them, we never realized how we got them, and how well, in different places in town, they gave us money to sponsor it. And we had it at the Millwall Theater. And there, when we had it, people came from all directions to hear the Wings Over Jordan. And we had a little booklet made, like a little, and a paper. And it had all the pictures of the graduates in it, and all the pictures of the teachers in it. And it was a wonderful thing. And of course my picture was in there, and they said I was president, and so they named each one that was in the class. We had a good class. We all came out, we kept in touch with each other. I think just about all of us now is passed away, and I have a friend in Washington. I have two that graduate with me, and they married each other when they finished school, and then they moved to Washington. And once in a while we call each other and talk to each other. And she was telling me that she couldn't drive anymore. Well, I can't drive anymore. And her name, Betty Jo, she was from Rudy Street. She was Betty Jo Hanley and Jeff. And her husband's name was Jeff Harris. And then I had a friend that died not too long ago. He was one of the kids that was he was like a brother, and his name was George Hawkins, and he passed, and he did well. He did really, really well. And most of the kids that graduated, they left Wytheville. and it went different directions, and we kept in touch with each other until we just all disappeared. And I think I'm the only, Betty Jo, and Jeff, and myself are the only three left in my class. The rest of them has passed, and it's sort of lonely, sad, you know, when you think about how long you were together, because but you know, it was fun too, because little things happened that you wouldn't think happened. I had a friend from Rotary. She went to school, and everybody in this town knew Roy, and Roy liked her, and but you know, during that time you didn't hold hands and you didn't like nobody, and he'd give her a BB bat. That was a candy, and she took it home and showed it to her parents, and her parents made her bring the BB bat back to him. But then after that, they still became friends, and long after they was out of high school, they were still in love with each other, and it was one of those things that ends happy endings.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like at the Whitfield Training School that you had an opportunity to do your academic work, your reading, your writing, your arithmetic, and you also had some social time.
Yeah, you had some social time. But you know, it came along at one time we had geometry, and I didn't like geometry. It seemed like a whole different ball game. But I learned to like it. I had to pass.
The highest grade you achieved at the Whitfield Training School was what grade?
The highest grade.
Uh-huh.
The highest grade at the Wytheville Training School was 11th grade.
The 11th grade.
We didn't go any farther, but the other school was 12th grade.
Mm-hmm. So the Whitfield Training School was a segregated school.
Yeah, very segregated.
And because it was before the schools were integrated.
Yes.
What other schools were in the areas that you all were able to align with or have sports competitions or?
Oh, the ones that that's when I left that out, because we had a football team, and they would go to we'd go to Wytheville when they had the games, and that's where they played people like Marion. They would play Marion and play Christiansburg, and then they played Genoa High School. And I was a cheerleader, so I got to go to the games because Miss Harmon always took me to the games. And so we always got to go to the games and perform, and it was interesting. It was somebody had gave the uniforms to them, and you wouldn't believe what the uniforms looked like, but they wouldn't participate and they played. But Christiansburg was the worst school to play.
Why do you feel that?
Because the cheerleaders were so mean.
So there was a good sense of camaraderie.
But it was always a rivalry thing with Christiansburg, and it was a rivalry thing when it came to the Marion. It was always a rival between the girls, and because some of the boys liked the girls, you know, and we didn't like playing Marion. I remember being a cheerleader and getting spit on, you know.
And this was at the
ball game.
And was this at the black schools?
Yeah, black schools. We never played a white school. Mm-hmm. They gave us the uniforms that they didn't need, you know. I remember the first when they first got a football team at Whitfield Training School. They went out and they had to go through the community and ask for money to buy uniforms or get what they needed to participate. And I remember them going down to different stores in town, and you used to be surprised at how some of those people, what they gave them. They gave them nickels and dimes. They never gave them $1, you know. And but they survived. They had this football team and they survived.
We noticed that on some of the pictures here in the museum of the football team that the uniforms were not uniform.
No.
And was that because they were handed down from the schools, or how did that occur?
That they was handed down, and the others, they had good uniforms, but when their uniforms was they just weren't uniforms, and that's the way it was when the band, when they left the Wytheville Training School and went to Scott, they handed down their uniforms, and they weren't even with the colors of the school. You know, they was a different color, but they participated. They wore them, and they were proud to have them. You know,
Because it made them feel like a band.
yeah.
So, how do you think that impacted the students, or did it not impact them at all? Having uniforms, and some had helmets, some didn't. When they went out to play the game, do you think it affected them at all, or not at all?
I don't think they affected them at all, because they had these uniforms and they was glad to be able to play, you know, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to play. And they had these uniforms, and they went out to play, and they played hard. I remember Christiansburg, they were really rivals, and one day the cheerleaders decided this was mean, I think, but then I think about it later and it was okay. They had a big old picture. We had one football player, and his name was, we called him Susie. His name was Clarence Austin, and we called him the Bull. And so we found a big picture of a bull, and we sent it to Christiansburg, and the principal was upset about it at Christiansburg. He spoke to our principal, Mr. Harmon, and they decided once that they weren't going to play us, but they played us, and we apologized for it. But we just thought it was something funny, you know. It was just something to do, but they didn't like it.
So you mentioned your principal, Mr. Harmon. Did he teach, or was he a principal at any of the other schools?
He taught here, and then when they built Scott, they moved him. He went to Scott, and he was at Scott for a while.
Okay.
And then he moved on. Mr. Harmon was like a father figure. Him and his wife both taught school, and they lived here. They lived on Franklin Street, up on the corner of Franklin Street and 9th Street. And they were just interested in the children. And after school, they would have some of us to come to their house, and she would teach us how to cook different things. And he always had a little photograph place where he would do studio, where he would do pictures and things, and he would show us. He had lots of pictures from the schools and he would show us how to develop those pictures and the thing. They was always doing something for you. I remember that Miss Harmon told us that she made potato salad, and we would have little socials sometime. On Friday, we would have social ice cream socials, we call them. And the people would come and visit, and we would have ice cream. And she was always like a mother figure, and he was like a father figure. And the people, they just took care of you.
So there was a great relationship between the students and the leadership of the school.
Mm-hmm, it was a wonderful relationship. I remember if you did anything wrong, Mr. Harmon would call you. If he heard of anything wrong in the community that you might be involved in, or you might get involved in it, he would call a meeting, and he would have each student to come to him, and he would talk to them, and he would tell them what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And he was a good preacher, but you had to get it. Once you didn't want to hear him, he taught school, and he taught on the stage. And the boys were sort of, they would do a little, he liked to talk about Pulaski, because that's where he came from, Pulaski. and he talked about his family and things. And the boys would get him off on Pulaski, and we wouldn't have no class that day. But otherwise, it was great. I mean, I just loved coming to school. But when in the wintertime, when you came, in the winter and it snowed, we didn't have buses and things, here in town. And in the wintertime, when you came, you had to, you ended up coming to school, and you meet one of the students coming back from school to tell you they weren't having school today because it had snowed so bad. We never had days where you understood that it wasn't going to be no school, and because you had no way of knowing.
Right.
And so we had to come to school before we knew that they weren't having school.
Yeah. You didn't have cell phones to rely on.
Mm-mm.
So when I read the literature of the Wytheville Training School and Culture Center, or the Wytheville Training School at the time, it indicates that there were students that traveled sometimes a 75-mile radius.
We had a bus driver that drove, and he was from Galax, and he would come. They came as far as Ivanhoe and Elk Creek, Independence. I had a lot of kids in my class from Independence and Rural Retreat, Max Meadows. They would come, and some kids would go early in the morning, and they would come to school about 3 o'clock in the morning, so they had to get up. I had two students that came from the Cove. They were Lucille Robinson and James Robinson. And then you weren't allowed to, they didn't have a bus for blacks to come to school. You got here the best way you could. And they would let those two come to ride the bus from the Coves. And the Coves about 13 miles out,
Mm-hmm.
And they had to walk way. I went one time to spend the night with Lucille, and I bet she had to walk 2 or 3 miles to catch the bus. And they would come to and they never missed.
So she enjoyed school.
Mm-mm. It was always at school.
Yes.
And
So if you had one thing that you would like to share about the Wytheville Training School, what would that be?
it would be when we would have our talent shows. And that would be the fun time because you always look forward to the talent shows. And then the other one was when Miss Rice came to teach us Bible study, and then she would teach us songs, and then we go into the Bible, and that was one thing I enjoyed, because during those times your parents didn't have time to do all that when it came to the Bible and Bible school. They would tell you right from wrong, but when they get right down to it, they taught you, but you didn't get what you would get from a teacher. And she went from county to county, and she would teach us Bible studies and things out of the Bible. And it was interesting. And then I enjoyed being with my friends.
So, one of the reasons why we're doing this video and capturing this information is because the intent is to keep history alive and to tell the stories. Mm-hmm. And so, as we've shared before, and so today I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story about your experience at the Wytheville Training School. As a student, it sounded like you had a lot of fun and a lot of learning, and we appreciate you sharing your story. So thank you, Ms. Crockett.
Thank you for asking me.
Very well. Today, we are really fortunate to be able to interview someone that played on the state champion for the Scott Memorial Hornets, the Scott Memorial High School Hornets. And so this is a part of our history that we want to make sure that people know. Today, I have Mr. Arthur Johnson Sr., and we're going to interview him and let him tell us about his experience being a member of that basketball team that went to the state champions in 1962. Good afternoon, Coach Johnson. How are you?
I'm fine.
Great. So tell me about your experience being on that team and what it was like to go to the state championship. So first, let me just start and take a step back and ask you a little bit about the coach of that team.
Okay, our coach was Coach Ernie Smith. He had gone to Bluefield State College after serving his time in the Marine Corps.
Now, was that a historically black university or college?
It is, and
Yes.
it still is today.
Very good.
And so Coach came when we were in the 9th grade, and the teams before us did not win any games.
Right.
And I can remember Reese Johnson, myself, Bandy and Clyde going into a shower room telling some team from Christiansburg Institute, if y'all stay around, we'll beat y'all. And they said,
My
you little
goodness.
snotty-nosed kids, get out of here. So we had been playing basketball forever. We would sweep snow off of the court over here at the Pendleton Court.
Yes.
And we wanted to be good basketball players. And so we kept playing. And our first year, we were 12-8.
Yes.
And then our next year, we went up to 14. We won 14 games, and we lost 6. And the next year, we went up to 18 ball games. Our senior year, when we won the state, we were 23-3. And we were able to play at Hampton Institute for the state championship.
My
So
goodness.
we had never been up on the eastern shore of the state of Virginia.
Yes.
When we got up there, they had a flood. So we could not go through the tunnel to go over to Hampton Institute. We
Yes.
had to stay in Norfolk. Can you imagine a basketball team staying in 2 rooms down on Church Street of Norfolk?
My goodness.
It was something to be seen.
Now, Coach Johnson, let me know. Tell me, that experience staying in a hotel, were you allowed in a time of segregation to stay in a hotel that was for blacks and white or for coloreds only?
For coloreds only. It was on Church Street. It was the worst part of Norfolk. And we did not know this until the bus driver told us he was taking us over to Hampton, to the college there at Hampton Institute. And he told us that Church Street was one of the worst streets in Norfolk. So we didn't know, we were young, we didn't know anything about how bad places were because...
You came from a very rural area.
That's right. And so when we got to Hampton, they gave us an area to stay in, and we had to play a team, Bruton Heights, from Williamsburg, Virginia.
Yes.
Okay, we were supposed to play at 1 o'clock. And they said, you can't play at 1 o'clock. You got to play at 8 o'clock because Bruton Heights bringing 3 charter buses. So they told us to hang out and just watch games and everything. And so we were talking to the cheerleaders from Bruton Heights. They didn't know that we were the team that they were going to play. They said, we are playing a team from up in Southwest Virginia, some old country team. And so we kept talking and everything. And so when 7 o'clock came around, time for us to go out and warm up, the cheerleaders said, well, we've been talking to them. And they got names on the back of their jerseys. And so we beat them. Reese Johnson had a magnificent game. He probably scored about 25 or 30 points without the tray line.
Yes.
And I remember going to the huddle, and he asked Coach, he said, do you want me to keep shooting? Coach Smith told him, said, you better not stop. And so it was just amazing, and everybody had their role to play. I was a point guard. My job was to get the ball to Bandy, Reese, Clyde, and Richie Coates. And then their job was to rebound and throw it out, and I would run the ball down and make a layup.
Yes.
And so everybody had their role to play. And it was really great. And we won the state. We beat Bruton Heights. We beat them at 10 points. Then we turned around and we played Suffolk. We beat them badly because they weren't as good as Bruton Heights. Bruton Heights was supposed to beat us and put us out of the tournament.
Yes.
And then after we played them, we played a team in not Charlottesville. I can't think of the other team that we played, but we played 3 games, won all 3, and then we came home, it was really great. We had so many people coming to our games that if you didn't come early, you didn't get a seat.
Couldn't get a seat.
And the thing of it was, we had as many white spectators as we did black spectators.
Yes.
And the stage, if you've ever been in Scott, the stage was full of people. And the little bleachers that we had only would hold a certain number of people. But we had people all the way around the gym. And the fire marshal should have closed us down, but he didn't. And that sums up how we won a state championship by playing. When it would snow, we couldn't stay in the house. We had to be outside. We would sweep the snow off the court so that we could play. And we had to be at home by dark.
Right.
And if we didn't, it would be pretty tough for us. But that pretty well sums it up on how we won a state championship.
Well, I have a couple of more questions, and it's my understanding that the coach kind of had a nickname for everyone.
He did.
What was your nickname?
Rabbit.
Rabbit.
Yeah.
And what did that mean?
Well, I was pretty quick. I was probably the fastest person on the team. And everybody had a nickname.
That's what I hear. And as you remember, what were some of the other team members' nicknames?
Bandy was Big John. Reese was we called Reese Ida. That was his mom's name. And Charlie Penn, we called him Ossie.
That was his mother's name.
That was his mother's name. And that's what we did. And we got along so well. We were family.
It's my understanding that team was so cohesive that it was like a family.
It's just like a family. And if one didn't have, the other one would give to them. And the only person there we pretty well had a hard time was Richie Coates, and we called Richie Donella.
That was his mother's name.
That was his mother's name. And so, but other than that, we were just so close.
Right.
And till they passed away, we were still close. Reese and I were really close. Bandy and I were really close. Clyde calls me often. He's probably was the cleanup man on the team, and now he's a minister.
And a bishop. I'm made to understand he's a bishop.
He's the worst person on the team. The dirtiest person on the team. But we all had jobs to do, and that was about it, you know.
And I just want to say before we close with your interview, being a state champion was significant, particularly among the African American community. There were teams that you played within a 50-mile radius, such as the Christiansburg Institute.
Carver Salem.
And Carver Salem.
We played the team over in Bluefield. They were so much. The teams that we played the schools were so much larger than ours. I think that we had 230 or 240 kids going to Scott, and we played schools like Albert Harris High School, tremendous number of kids. Carver Salem, Lucy Addison High School, Roanoke would not play us. They told us that it would be embarrassing for us to beat them, so they wouldn't play us. Like you said, Christiansburg Institute, Liam Wade of Franklin County, Susie Gibson of Bedford, and those were most of the teams that we played, and we had to travel, and we didn't have 81.
Right, and so the roads were kind of treacherous, would you say, or the terrain was?
They were bad. The roads were bad. We had to go over Lover's Leap to get to Martinsville. And the thing about that was we could not stop at none of the fast food places, or either we had to go around back. And when we go around back, you didn't know what you were getting. So what we would do, Miss Murbill Johnson, she would pack food for us, and we would eat sandwiches going and coming, and then we didn't have to worry about that.
Great.
And so, but it was really great. I enjoyed it. I missed some of the guys. I was talking to Charlie Penn. It's only three players living now, and one manager, and that was Arthur Ray Crockett. And Arthur Ray was in 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And but I really enjoyed each and every one of them. I wish people would get along today the way that we got along then. We just got along so well.
Coach, I want to just ask you one more question. You know, you've been such a strong figure in the community, and you ended up not only being a player, but you were a very, very noteworthy coach in the high schools, not only in Wytheville and Wythe County, but also in the Pulaski area.
I did. I coached in Pulaski for 11 years, and the kids call me every week. If something happened, they let me know, and I go down. And sometimes we have a cookout, and we get together. Yeah, I coached there for 11 years, and I coached some really good athletes. And I coached here 22 years, and I had some really good athletes. And it was doing something. It wasn't a job. It was doing something that I enjoyed doing.
And giving back to your community.
And giving back to the community.
I'm sure. So, Coach Smith, in just closing, I just want to ask one question that I think is so significantly important.
Okay.
Having that cohesive team and that coach, do you think that had an influence on your career?
It did. It did. It had a great influence on me because let me say these things. Let me say a few things about Coach Smith. Coach Smith came here and he dressed tremendously. And we were people that we didn't have a lot, but we wanted to dress like Coach Smith. We wanted to tie a tie and wear a tie like Coach Smith. And we dressed well because we wanted to look like Coach Smith. And it worked out really good.
So role modeling was very important and influential to the team and also what you all reflected in the community. Would that be a correct statement?
That's a great statement. That's a great statement.
So, Coach, I just want to say thank you very much for being a part of this interview. The purpose of these interviews is to tell our story so that the history lives on, and we're going to keep history alive. And you were a significant part of that history. The state championship with the Scott Memorial Hornets was a significant part of that history, and we want to be able to pass that on. So we thank you today for your time. We thank you for all the contributions that you've made to the community. And this is not the last interview, only beginning. So we thank you very much for your efforts.
And thank you. You are doing a tremendous job here. And if it's anything I can help you with, give me a holler.
We sure will. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Today, we're at the Wytheville Training School and Culture Center, and we're going to be interviewing Mr. Kenneth Johnson. Back in 1960s, there was an emergence of big bands and live music, and everybody seemed to enjoy it. Music is known as one of those universal languages that everybody understands. So we in Southwestern Virginia, in Appalachia, want to tell our story about the Velveteers. And today, as I said before, we have Mr. Kenneth Johnson. And in 1967, the Velveteers was written up in the Wytheville Enterprise because of the explosion of music at the Withers Park. Thank you. Mr. Johnson, could you please introduce yourself and tell us the city in which you live?
Yeah, my name's Ken Johnson. That's my artist name. And I live here in Wytheville, Virginia. I've been here for 77 years. And this has become my home. And I grew up with a beautiful family, beautiful mom, a beautiful dad. My mother's name was Ida. My father's name was Reese. And we just had a big family, around about 10. And music has been in our family for as long as I can remember.
Would you say your love for music may possibly be generational?
I don't think it is. I know it is. My dad used to play guitar, and it was a group in this area in my family. It was called the Monroe String Band, or Reese Monroe. I can't exactly remember which the first name was, but it was called String Band, and this was in Crockett's Cove here in Wythe County, and they would go to different events and play and for entertainment, and my dad he used to play in the group, and also my uncle, my father's brother, his name was Will. He used to play in the group as well, and I think that had a lot to do with it.
Great. Can you tell me about the emergence of the Velveteers?
Emergence of the Velveteers, that's kind of interesting. My brother John was, bless his heart, he passed away in July, was a prolific musician, and my family and my brothers and my sisters, they all enjoyed music. And it was in the summertime, I believe it was, back in maybe the latter part of 1966, that somebody decided that they wanted to get a group together. And we started off as a couple fellows at the 7th Street Recreation Center, which was actually run by my late brother Mac Johnson. And that's where it pretty much started, yes.
So I'm looking at an article in the Enterprise. I noticed the description, the Velveteers, a popular local Negro band among the rock and roll musical groups, and you performed at this DECA Diamond Jubilee.
Yeah.
Share that experience with us.
Well, our group emerged, and it was about the time of not rhythm and blues, but soul music. And it was a different kind of music. It was different than rock and roll, bebop, or doo-wop. It was just a different music, and it had a lot of punch to it. I think that's when the bass guitar come into play, I think, to a certain degree, with saxophones and trumpets and things like that. It was a powerful kind of a sound, and it was a moving kind of a sound, and it seemed like the people responded to it not only because of the sound of the music, but even what was being said. through the music. And at that time, it was at DECA, that's what it was, and it was we had a battle of the bands, and it was a local group that had been, playing for the last couple of years and doing pretty well, winning. And we decided that not my idea, but it was probably George Crockett's, I'd say, and also James Wise. They were pretty much the same age, and they decided that we should participate in the Battle of the Bands, and we did.
And I noticed that the Enterprise wrote that you guys were number one, and the prize was $50. The prize was $50.
I don't remember what the prize was, but I do know that, $50 was, it was enough to maybe buy some shoes or something like that, a pair of shoes or whatever. And, with the group, it wasn't that many of us then. It was probably, I think it was about 6 of us. We split it up or something. I can't remember. But, $50 was kind of a bunch of money when somebody gives it to you for doing what you like to do.
And many of them indicated that they loved doing it. So I'm excited to talk about this today because I can remember as a young teenager, wherever the Velveteers played, we wanted to be there. So what was your experience as far as the actual audience?
My experience as far as the audience was concerned, like I say, it was something different. It was kind of like a change in the atmosphere with people, the mindsets of people and the way people looked at things, and the being able to communicate and just fellowship in a way. I call it fellowship since I've been in the church a lot. I've learned that the difference in just getting together and having a good time and fellowship. And it seemed like that's what they were doing. It seemed like the people just enjoyed being around each other, clean, wholesome, fun. And it seemed like that we actually got motivated by seeing the audience, by watching the audience respond to the different kind of music that we were playing and what we could offer. Plus we had a guy like John Johnson that been playing for a long time, and he took his work really serious and it put a demand on us to do better. And we all put our abilities together, and it seems like that togetherness was a draw card to those that come to hear and to enjoy the music.
To experience the music. It seemed, and just looking at some of the pictures, I see in some of the photographs, the audience was dominantly black, but then as I look at some of the later photographs, I see that there was an integrated audience. And as I said before, music kind of is a language that's spoken by every nationality. What was your experience with that audience?
With the audience, again, it was, like I said, the atmosphere with society had changed. I think people begin to view each other differently. There were opportunities that we had and we didn't. That when I say we, as a black person, we had that we couldn't have any other way here in Wythe County, and we began, with the integration of schools and stuff like that. We began to know different people. Not just in school, but we begin to fellowship or join each other, playing maybe sports on the hard top or something like that, and we knew them. We began to know each other by name and who they were, and people were choosing. They were making choices whether they wanted to stay separate or to become a part of another different way of looking at things and living. And as a black person, it wasn't that difficult for us because I'd always looked at people as just being people as long as they treated you halfway decent, and I think I want to say it, but I'm not going to. But I think once that people found out that we weren't the stereotypes that many people would claim to be, that they began to accept us or the group as a part or a symbol of just being human. So that's what we did. We just enjoyed ourselves, and we fellowshipped, or we communicated with one another, we entertained them, and in return they clapped their hands and said, "Man, you guys did a good job." Whatever it was, it was really cool.
It really was. I had the opportunity to experience that. Living in Wytheville, Virginia is living in southwestern Virginia in a place that is commonly described as Appalachia. As you traveled through Appalachia with this band and played the music, did you experience any actions of racism?
Appalachia, okay. That takes in a wide range of
Territory.
And plus, cultures and things like that. As being 77, things changed a lot. I remember speaking to a fellow maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, and I was in Kentucky. That's part of Appalachia. And part of it is. And he was telling me, he said, my parents live over here and up there, but I want to warn you, you don't want to go up there by yourself, because if you do, you may not come back. And what we did was, as a group, that we didn't go anywhere unless we were invited. And sometimes we would go places and people would do stuff, but it wasn't blatant, or it wasn't really that noticeable. Like we go into a place and we take a break, and we come back and some of our equipment would be gone, and we would, it wasn't no big deal, because most of the stuff that people would take or would be things that we would introduce into the culture, like maybe a pedal or something, or guitar pedal or something like that, or drumsticks, or something like that, where it was hard for them to find, or it was new to them, and they would do that. But other than that, anybody that came to any of the events that we performed at, we were invited to come. So it wasn't like we were intruding in somebody else's lifestyle or doing something. When we came, we came for one purpose, and we did what we did, and we left.
I asked that question because as you review some of the literature about the African American artists, or the Black artists, or the Negro artists that traveled along the Chitlin circuit, they described some episodes of being treated very harshly, not being able to use certain bathrooms, having to pack lunches. And I'm just wondering, during your travels, and not sure what the radius was that you traveled with the Velveteers, but wondering if that actually impacted the group at all.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you brought that up, because that the 7th Street Rec Center used to be a diner at one time, and they actually supplied or put food together for Wytheville Training School when it had children back in the day. And at the rec center, one, I can't remember, I think it was on a Friday night. We were all gathered together. People would come into the rec center, and play ping pong or whatever, listen to music or whatever. And it was just a good time for young people. I'm talking about, even 5 and 6 years old up to everybody, was just there. But this one particular night, we was there together, and this woman came through the door, and it just blew our minds. And it was Fontilla Bass. If y'all don't know who she is, she's the one that made the song called Rescue Me.
Yes.
And she had the voice like Aretha Franklin, but she was a thinner person, and she was so beautiful. And she came and she had her performing outfit on, which was a nice gown-like dress, and beautiful.
Sequins.
And she came into the door, and we just lost it. And she had pictures and stuff, and she'd give them to us and signed them and everything. And you was talking about the Chitlin circuit. It was kind of interesting that when she finished doing what she did, she went to Pulaski at the Pulaski Armory and performed that night, and we went down to see her. And, it was just as simple as you going and singing in the church choir. It wasn't about what color you were, or how much you had, or who's got the biggest car. Seemed like it was just about this lady came and performed, and we were thankful, and we said we appreciate that, and we wish you would come back again. And it wasn't about nitpicking or trying to be better than somebody else, or look how she was dressing better than somebody else, and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't necessary. People did what they did. They enjoyed the event, and they left, and they went home, and they cherished it, and they are able to speak about it 50 years later, 70 years later. Yeah, and I think that's what it's all about.
So I'm looking at the musicians and the instruments that they had. Some looked very sophisticated, and the dress that the musicians had. I look at Earl Sawyers, and I know his name was commonly, they called him Nuke. Tell us a little bit about Earl.
Wow, about Earl. And you're talking about the outfits. And a lot of people know it, and some people don't, because again, people are passing away, and a lot of things that when they do pass away, they take it with them. And I think about Earl, but then I think about this background and the culture that he came up in. We called him Nuke, but Earl's cool. And it was interesting. There was a Carberry's. No, it wasn't Carberry's. I can't remember. It was a men's clothing store down on the corner of Tassel Street in Maine. I can't remember, and I know the fella because he used to work for Leggett's and all that stuff. He's a good guy. What was his name? Anyway. They had some of the most wonderful outfits for men and clothing, and they had some double-breasted blazers, and they were so neat and cool. So everybody decided that we would go ahead and get us double-breasted blazers to perform in. And all the clothing was so wonderful and marvelous. And so we decided to do that. So that one time, so then Nuke came then in, and we was wondering what happened to Nuke's double-breasted blazers. If you look at all of the pictures that you see of him, if he's got a jacket on, it's been cut off and it's been shortened to waist length. And that is because of his brother Fred. His brother Fred was one of the most, how can I say it? He was one of the most creative seamstresses of any human being that I've ever known. And he would take and cut those brand new double-breasted blazers off and seam them up, and it looked just exactly like that they come off of the rack. Wow. And we couldn't do that, you know, and we didn't ask him to do it and stuff like that. But Nuke was like that. He was just a different person. He saw things different. And him and his brother, they just saw things differently than we did. But if, like I say, if you ever look at any of his photographs of the Velveteers, you'll see that they're cut off, and that's what the deal was. Nuke was special like that.
Yeah, and we plan to have some of those pictures available for view as we do an exhibit on the bands in Wytheville. So, I speaking of Nuke was his nickname.
Right.
And then there were several others in the band that had nicknames. And so the next person that I'm going to ask you about, and Nuke was a vocalist, am I correct?
Yeah.
And so there was another individual that was in the Velveteers that I see in several of the pictures, and his name was Diddy Wah, and I think his official name is James Wise.
Right.
What are your thoughts about Diddy Wah and his talents?
My thoughts about him. Again, you're looking at imagination and creativity. And I can go to most any place or any around here, and somebody knows James or Diddy Wah, and I even actually know where he got his name from, that nickname. But that's not important. The thing about James was, again, he was a creative, innovative. He had imagination, and he wasn't afraid to be first. Matter of fact, I think if you look in the archives of the Enterprise, James Wise was the first black man or black person to dive into the town pool. And he was just like that, and he never could take no for an answer. He could learn pretty much any instrument that come in his way. I think he finally settled on keyboards, which he now participates and uses as a livelihood in Florida as his business. And he's been doing it for years, and there's not a lot that I can't say because James could pretty much do it all.
Another gifted, talented musician.
Pretty much, yeah.
I see brass in this band. I see brass, which reminds me of that era with the live bands and the dancing and the music. And I think about Chicago and Earth, Wind and Fire. And then I think about the Velveteers. So tell me a little bit about some of your horn players. I see John M. Johnson. I see Gary Burks. I see Eric Harris. I see Tom Cook. I see several of your brass players. Just share about that brass group, please.
Well, if you look at the group when it first started, we didn't have a rhythm guitar player. And that was one of the things that people got mad at me. My first guitar was given to me by my sister, Lucy Ann, for a Christmas present. And it was a 6-string. And and that's when when we first started the group. I played the sixth string, but it served as a rhythm guitar and a bass guitar at the same time, and it was something missing that it couldn't, that combination wasn't going to work, and because all we had was a horn section, a drum, and a six-string guitar, trying to do a dual instrument, playing rhythm and bass on a six-string guitar. So the trumpets and the saxophones, could only do so much, and but it left us dead. It left the sound dead, and a lot of people didn't understand that. So John and them all they could do was is play like if we did an I Feel Good song by James Brown. You don't have the doom 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 doom. You don't have that. All you had was the horns, but you left that on the bottom, they call it, or the bass, and then we didn't have a regular straight lead guitar. But those guys actually filled in a lot for maybe like the rhythm guitar with extra toots here and there, especially John. And because he knew that that those spaces were being left open and there were gaps, and we went on like that for a long time until about '68, and I broke down and bought a bass guitar. So when I bought the bass guitar and bought it in, we had the bottom, but we didn't have the rhythm, and John and still had to struggle with the horn sections, and Eric and Tom Cook and Gary, they did pretty good. They did well. And then we got another guy came in. His name was James Green, or John Green, excuse me. He had a brother named James that could really play, and John came in and started playing the rhythm. And then that's when the group really got really fat. That's when the sound got really fat and strong, And it was a lot of relief. But they didn't like it when I bought the bass guitar in, because, man, they said, man, we don't like that thing. We just don't care about it. But things changed.
So later on, they realized that the addition of both guitars really kind of filled in the gap.
Yeah.
So you had quite a few vocalists, and I recall Nuke, and I recall Diddy Watt, and then I recall a young man by the name of Sweetie.
Before we get to Sweetie, Nuke's brother, Robert Rack, we call him Rack. He was the guy that named the group the Velveteers.
My goodness.
Yeah, and he would sing with us he was singing with us for a while, but I don't think that his heart was in it like it was with the rest of us, or something must have taken place. I'm not for sure, but if you notice some of the photographs, that he's on the floor dancing, and he could dance too. He liked that. But that's Robert, and then George. We call him George. His name is George Crockett Jr. or G.A. and we called him Sweetie, and he was the manager, or Mac was the manager, but Sweetie would get the gigs for us, and he would play the drums, and he would sing. But most of all, I don't know where he would get those gigs from, but he would get gigs all over in Bland County and at the Job Corps Center, and Oh, we would be everywhere. Rural retreat, playing at high schools and stuff like that, and all the way over like in Woodlawn, Virginia, we'd be over there, and Gay Locks and places like that. Yeah, and he would always say, he would come up with some pretty good money too, back in the day. But that's what he did. He was pretty good at it.
Yeah. So it sounds like the members of the band was a compliment and made a great team. Would you call the atmosphere a team or more like a family atmosphere?
Well, it wasn't a team. And as far as family, I wouldn't say we were a family, even though a lot of us was kind of kin to each other. But it was more like a gathering of intellects. That's the way I would look at it. It would be like a gathering of abilities or talents, and blending them together and coming up with, this is nice.
A great sound.
Yeah, this is nice. I'm glad to be here.
It made people happy.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So it sounds like the Velveteers. My hope is to be able to interview some more of your members of these great intellectual artists that made music come alive. I'm hoping to interview more of them so that as we begin to tell the stories of people that impacted our community, that the Velveteers is one that is noteworthy, one that we feel like should be remembered in our keeping our history alive. So Mr. Johnson, we want to thank you today for coming forth and helping us tell our stories in Southwestern Virginia, in Appalachia, and with connections to the Wytheville Training School and Cultural Center. So, sir, we thank you for adding to the body of knowledge in keeping our history alive.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
And this is a place where we feel like our history is significantly important, and the stories that have impacted our community needs to be told. So, Mr. Davis, we want to say welcome, Mr. Roger T. Davis. And just for the record, could you please state your name?
Roger Trenton Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And could you state your address, please?
It's
just the city.
Vinton, Virginia.
Vinton, Virginia.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Davis. And again, welcome to the Wytheville Training School, and thank you for helping us keep history alive. So, Mr. Davis, you are known for one of the most famous Virginians in this area. So, Mr. Davis, you are known to be a famous Virginian. Why do you think that might be a description of you?
There's a lot that could be said for that, but I say it was God's intention for this purpose right now, which is to uplift people. Some of us have to suffer, so all of us don't. What was done to me back during those days was not so much a crime as it was black people being harvested. You had to have people to fill the prison cells. You had to have people in the community that the so-called town fathers of Wytheville looked down on.
Absolutely.
I was a free spirit and a free person. I didn't have any fear of white society.
Yes.
And that was a thing that really infuriated the white society of Wytheville.
So in 1973, you had an experience that was eye-opening to the community, and really, to be quite honest with you, not only in the United States, but globally. You are known throughout the world for the unjust sentencing that occurred. Could you share information about that?
The
Just sentencing.
In 1973, from 1619 to today,
Yes.
there was no unjust sentencing of black people according to the system. All black people were treated accordingly as we were in the beginning. So my case was no different than my father's case, and he was murdered in 1953, left laying on the side of the highway, dead. The man that killed him, I think, got 3 months probation.
My goodness.
So Virginia and Wytheville and America, they have a record or a history of harvesting black men when they need someone to run through the court, when they need to justify the police departments for the courts to work to make sure that one black person is made an example of for all black people. During the slavery days, they would cut off your foot, beat the hell out of you. But today, they use the court systems to, I don't know, get what they feel that a black man, a black woman has coming.
Right.
So I don't know if I've answered your question the way you wanted, but there's just so much to it that it's hard for me to centralize on one specific reason
Yes.
why this happened to me. But then I say, why not me?
Yes.
I withstood it. I learned. To me, I haven't been in prison. I've been in school. So 47 years for what? 8 ounces of marijuana? That wasn't the issue. The issue was I was an outspoken young black man, very handsome, and the white women loved me. And the white guys respected me. If you didn't, then we had a fight. And after the fight, you would respect me. And I'm the same way today. So I haven't done anything to warrant a 40-year prison sentence other than being a black man. And I'm still a black man.
Right.
And I'm not going to change how I feel or my heart about who I am, my identity or our identity.
Because of your experiences.
My experiences and the way God created me. God created this here, you know. The so-called town fathers of Wytheville did not create Roger Davis. And they cannot control him. Why? Because my mind and my soul are free. Lock me up, but I still exist. So here I am today, 40-something years later, with that same arrogant smile on my face and the same God in my heart that I had back then. A lot of time was wasted in my persecution, but then again, I will not let it be a waste. I am a famous person. Famous for what? Because I suffered some injustice. We've all suffered some injustice. To stand here in these hallowed halls, and I think of all the great men and women that came through here that didn't have the opportunity to reach their fullness, the fullness of who they are, their character. Why? Because this was a jail here also. Segregation was a jail. Black people were second, third, fourth class citizens. So what was done to me was done to the whole community. The whole black of America has suffered my indignation, and it's time for this to be told. Wytheville, Virginia has been a very evil small town, and it's remained so today. And if we don't step up and say what the issues are, it's going to continue.
Mr. Davis, I think that many of us agree with you, but few of us are willing to take a stand. And so I know as you were 47 years ago, you were not fearful and did not allow fear to drive your actions. Exactly. As you said, there was an injustice, and you did serve time in prison.
Yeah.
From that experience, what have you now learned, and did it change any behaviors?
I really didn't need to change my behavior because my behavior was proper. It was taught to me by a loving mother and also a community. It's no way that I can say what I learned from being in prison. I learned everything I needed to learn about life. I already knew it before I went there, but being in prison gave me time to look back and reflect on the evil that is in charge in a lot of instances. So many black people have suffered because of the so-called they didn't know. They wasn't taught proper. But who's going to teach you? The white community? How are you going to teach me right when you won't treat me right? So, all of us have suffered the same indignation. I'm famous not because of what I did, but because of what I will do. And it is sitting right here, right now, accepting my past and also my present and my future. And, my objective is to uplift not only black people, but white people. There are so many ignorant ass white people that need uplifting. They need to understand what they did to me years ago was wrong. And what they're doing today is wrong. And if we don't change it, they're not going to change it because they're all right with it. But we have a lot of things that we must consider. I'm famous. Hey, so what? Yeah, I'm also a human. I'm also like everybody else. I'm not going to change. I don't need to. So
thank you for answering that question. I have a couple more questions, and I just would like to reflect a moment. You grew up in rural Virginia.
Yeah.
And in rural Virginia, we have a lot of customs and traditions and family connections that teach us life lessons. Mm-hmm. If you had to identify one life lesson that you've carried from childhood to this day, what would that be?
The murder of my father. That is the life lesson that I taught, that I learned. They taught me the hard way. Mm-hmm. When he left the house with some friends, I remember Mama saying to him, "Be careful." She had a worried look on her face, very worried, like I'd never seen before. And, I noticed that, and as a young man, 8, 9 years old, it just kind of bothered me. I didn't realize why. But then the next morning, here come the police to the house and said they had found my father on the side of the highway from River Retreat, and he'd been taken to the hospital. That particular incident totally and completely not just changed my life, it changed all of our lives. It changed the black community of Wytheville County also, because I don't think there was a black man anywhere that didn't wonder if he might not be next.
Right.
So, sure, that changed me. It put me on the defensive. It created an anger in me that you would not believe. How could anybody do this to such a beautiful, wonderful man? Here was a man, he had, 7 kids, wife pregnant with another one. You can take him out somewhere and kill him. And then I'm not supposed to have any feelings or emotions about that. I grew with my emotions. I grew with my defensive posture. I'm not going to let anybody hurt me. I don't give a damn what color you are, which caused me to whoop a lot of people here in Wytheville for trying to hurt me. But I grew up in a defensive mode because of that incident. That changed my whole life. And I realized, hey, I don't want to die. I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be killed. I don't want to hurt nobody. So I made sure that I was always on defense. I traveled where I wanted to, and I stayed on guard. And it paid off. I messed around and I have lived for 79 years.
Absolutely. And I just want to share something with you, Mr. Davis. As I was growing up as a young teenager, me and my friend really kind of looked up to you because we always knew that if something was wrong and we told you, you would get it right. Yeah. So we saw you as a protector. There was a certain protective nature about you to make sure that people were treated right. And so I always remembered that, as I would say to my friend, we need to make sure Roger knows that because he'll look out for us. So we saw you as a protector in our community. And I'm not sure if anybody has shared that with you, but I'd like to share that with you today. I want you to know that we recognize that in you, and we always felt like in your presence that we were safe.
Yeah, well, and you are, and that has not changed.
Well, we thank you for that, for looking out for our community, because we knew you to be a man that had that characteristic. So one other question, your sentencing was all about 8 or 9 ounces of cannabis.
Right.
And today we see cannabis in a very different way. Share your experiences about the use of cannabis then and now.
Back then it was just the beginning. People were just beginning to turn on to something different than the war, than the hardships and all that we were suffering. 1966, it was a tremendous year. People started experimenting with marijuana, including myself. Why? Because I want to know what all the fuss was about. So I smoked it. And hey, it really didn't do anything. It didn't change me and make me any better, any worse. It was just something that I experienced. And then I saw so many people experiencing it, black and white. And I saw so much mentality changing, where people who were just somewhat, overly racist or mean could smoke a joint of marijuana and their whole personality would change. So this, to me, it was good. So many people needed their personality changed from violence and racism to acceptance and let's get along. And this is what attracted me to use marijuana. It attracted me to people who used it. And I realized then that, hey, this is a good thing. It has brought some people together, black and white. Look at us. We're here smoking the same joint. We're having conversations. We're happy. We're not, fighting and it just grew. It grew from that into today. I went to prison in 1973, 40 years for 8 ounce of pot. A gentleman from here in Wytheville was already there in prison doing life and 40 years for killing 2 people. He came to my cell. He bought me 4 or 5 joints of marijuana and a large knife. I just come in 40 years for 8 ounce of pot. And here we are sitting in 500 Spring Street State Penitentiary smoking marijuana with a knife that big under my mattress. And, what am I here for? What have I done? It's here. It's everywhere. But, I've got 40 years. Brother Head, he's got life and 40 years for killing 2 people. But there we sat in the same prison, smoking the same pot and laughing and just free at heart. It really a mind-expanding experience. I'm here for 40 for marijuana. Here marijuana is locked up in prison with me. Who's wrong here? What have I done? So it was something that it changed my thinking. Marijuana has enhanced my being. It's made me a better person. It's made me able to accept a lot of things that I could not accept in a straight frame of mind. So, I would love to see it totally and completely legal, just like on my shirt. Free to weed. It's nothing but a herb that God gave us as medicine. It's medicine for the mind and the spirit. And that's why I use it. I don't care about going back to prison for marijuana. It's just something that other people are wrong, not me, for the way I think, because I've experienced it. You hear a lot of talk about how bad it is and the laws and all. And generally that talk comes from people who've never smoked a joint. They've never experienced it. Well, then they don't have a right to voice any opinion on it because they don't know. They speak dumb knowledge. So until one sits down and smokes a joint, then he can determine if it is detrimental or not. If you have smoked it, there's nothing wrong with it. If you haven't, you don't have no right saying thing about it. So, it's just something that people have to realize for themselves. I realized it. I use cannabis. I use marijuana. I'm always going to use it. Anyone that is offended by that, then they can stay away from Roger Davis. My objective is the same. Uplifting my fellow man, my fellow woman. History, preservation of my people. They tried every way they could to take the life out of me, but they put more life in me. Instead of sitting in prison worrying and all that, I kept my head in a book. So if you want to hide anything from a black person, put it in a book. So that's why I found the answers that I need to be here today. And to accept that so-called famous person in America, to be able to talk to anyone, any man on face of earth, he is my equal. I'm never going to meet my superior. I'll always meet my equal. So it don't matter the education or what it is, it's two people. So.
And we thank you for talking a bit about education, because as you know, this is the Wytheville Training School Culture Center, and its presence began based on a government organization called the Freedmen's Bureau to educate the freed slaves. And so for years, this was the place where the coloreds or the blacks came to school. This was the 4-room place that began to be a structured education process for the blacks. And education, you talked about while you were in prison, being able to read and to open your mind to new knowledge. And so we believe that the existence of this facility will open minds to new knowledge. You've shared a lot of knowledge with us today, and we're hoping that this information that you've shared will continue to impact our community, because we have young men in our community that looks just like you did at the age that you were jailed unjustly and charged with a crime and put in a cell close to someone that had killed 2 people, and you in the possession of, therefore, possession of 8 ounces of marijuana. So we want to be able to make those comparisons and teach our young about the injustices and how do you come out of it. We want to thank you today for sharing your story, because your story is one of empowerment. You are more than the sum of your parts, and so we thank you for imparting that knowledge upon us, and we thank you for coming to the Wytheville Training School to do that, because we believe the roots of this school will reach our community and many more. So Mr. Davis, we want to say thank you for sharing your story, and we want to say that we hope that this is just part 1 of your story, because there is a part 2 that is emerging, and we want to hear that as well.
All right.
So thank you for being with us.
All right, thanks for having me.
A live series. And in this series, the stories that are being told impacted our community significantly. And so today we're going to be talking to Mr. Robert Green IV. Mr. Green had an experience that like no other. You know, he, much like the rest of us, had an experience at a very early time in his life where he fell in love. You know, we don't always get to control our emotions to determine who we fall in love with. But once that love bug hits us, we know it. So Bobby fell in love with a young lady by the name of Abby. Now this situation, this relationship is very similar to the relationship of Richard and Mildred Loving. Some of us are very familiar with this relationship and others may not be. This is a marriage that was interracial that went to the Supreme Court. And so here we had our own experience, much like Richard and Mildred Loving, except Richard and Mildred got married initially in Washington, D.C. Not the case so much with Bobby and Abby. Bobby and Abby fell in love in Wytheville and decided that they wanted to get married. So at this point in time, I'm going to introduce Mr. Green, have Mr. Green introduce himself to you, and we're going to talk about that experience. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Green. Welcome to the Wytheville Training School and Cultural Center, and welcome to this wonderful opportunity for you to share your story. So could you please, for the record, state your name and where you live?
Yes, my name is Robert Albert Green IV, and I live here in Wytheville, Virginia.
Very good. And so how long have you lived in Wytheville, Virginia?
I have lived here practically all my life. I am 68 years old. I did travel a few places for employment and for military service, but basically I've lived here all my life.
So if one was to ask you, what are some similarities with your relationship and the relationship as Richard and Mildred Loving tell their relationship and their encounters, how would you say that they were similar?
Well, one thing I can say is Abby and I, like the Lovings, we fell in love not based on our color, but because of our heart. We didn't see color. I saw her one day walking down the hall and took it from there. I mean, there was nothing about color or anything. It was just from the heart.
So you knew that lady that you saw walking down the hall was the one for you.
Yes, I did.
That's the way that love bug hits sometimes. Okay, so, it's my understanding that, of course, the Richard and Mildred Loving story indicates that this situation, when they got to Virginia, it was determined that, the marriage was illegal. It wasn't legal to be married, interracial couples to be married in Virginia. And of course, that was in 1958. And this case went all the way to the Supreme Court. Before it got to the Supreme Court, they had a lot of encounters. And so what I'm going to ask you, when you were in preparation for your marriage, what type of encounters did you experience?
A lot of the encounters that we experienced was resistance from both sides, both races. Some of the resistance was out of ignorance, and I would say some of it was out of fear. And when I say fear, I'm talking about, for example, my family being raised in a different time. They were more afraid of, like, something's going to happen to you, Bobby. They're going, I'm afraid somebody's going to try to hurt you or murder, shoot you or anything. And then Abby's family was more like, all right, my daughter, is going to be ostracized by the public or her relatives.
Yes. And, we do live in a city where there was a lynching of a Raymond Byrd,
Yes.
And because of his encounter and a relationship as a black man with a white woman. So we can understand why there would be significant fear among the African American population, because there was generational hangings because of a relationship of the different races. And I'm sure at one point, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that someone made a comment about the races no longer being pure. Is that something that you would say occurred? That they would be afraid because of this interracial relationship and the offsprings that you might have, that the race would no longer be pure?
The biggest obstacle I had was not so much being pure. It was like, for example, her mother, rest her soul, was saying, well, you're going to if you have a child, what side of the race is she going to be accepted on? Also, my mother and them they had any qualms. I mean, they opened their arms up to my wife, and they wouldn't worry about that. And I'm not trying to be prejudicial or anything, but it was more on the white side of the main resistance and the worry about, who's going to treat you which way, or you're degrading yourself by marrying a black man, things like that. But, love, not only love, but God overcomes these kind of obstacles in life.
So you just mentioned God, and usually when people think about God, they think about religious institutions. What was your experience in getting married in your own church?
Well, the experience is first, let me back up. The first experience about when we're going to get married was her family turned their back on her, 100%. They didn't have anything to do with us. They were not going to be participating in any marriage. They were not going to let us use so we knew we were going to get married there.
Right.
Our church, we figured, since I grew up in that church, my family was from the church, that, we'd be able to get married. And what really hurt me was I had brought her to a revival at our church. And, she was accepted and everything. But when it came down to getting married, our pastor, he just came to us and said that half the church was for it, half the church was against it. And that's the only time that I felt like my heart was broke. It broke my heart that I had grown up in our church, and then I could not believe that half of my church was against that after they knew who I was, and they found out who she was.
Well, do you think that this was because of what was the denomination of the church?
It's Methodist.
Okay, United Methodist. Do you think it was because of the doctrine of the church or the local perception of the community?
It was the local perception of the community. That's what I believe.
There was no doctrine that said that you could not be married as an interracial couple in the United Methodist Church.
The reason, what our former pastor said, he came to our house because I was still at home, and he talked to my parents and I, and he basically verbally said, I cannot marry you all because I am not going to split my church.
So you had to come up with a plan B.
Yeah, and my plan B was my family, my parents, other adults that had raised me almost as their own, said, well, we'll have it here at your house and we will support you and Abby. And that was, if I'm allowed to mention names, the only one that's living now is Miss Louise Crockett.
So she witnessed the wedding.
Oh, yes.
Louise Crockett.
Miss Louise Crockett participated. Not only did but witnesses, they participated. They got in there with my mother and my aunts and a lot of other women, and got in there and got that wedding going themselves. And to me, I'll never forget it. And I'll always be grateful for them. Those that are living now, which is only Miss Crockett, and those that are gone, they supported Abby and I and took us in like they had always done when I was a child. And I will never forget that.
And what year was that?
The date was April 17th, 1976.
1976. It seems like a very long time ago, and yet it's not. So this interracial marriage occurred. That wasn't the end of the story. That wasn't the only adversity that you encountered.
No.
What other encounters did you experience just because of being an interracial couple?
A lot of experiences that we witnessed. Number one was housing.
Housing.
We were lucky that we lived with my grandmother, and then when she passed away, we were trying to find a place of our own. And the worst thing that happened there was I was working and Abby was answering ads for a place to rent. And so Abby went by herself, being white, because we knew if we went together, we weren't going to be able to get anything. Mm-hmm. Abby went to a gentleman, and actually I went to high school with this gentleman's father that owned a place. He talked to my wife, told her exactly no problem, because I had a good job, and that the place is you all's. And she said, well, I just need to bring my husband by in the following day and let him look at the residence and see if that is what he wants to do. So the next day we came. Once he saw who I was, he changed everything. For example, he said, well, I don't know if I'm going to rent it or not. I've got some other people here. Plus, if I rent it to you, I expect it to be kept clean. I expect my rent to be paid on time. I'll let you know. Right then, we knew that was a no-no. Mm-hmm. So we had to find another place.
So how difficult was that? Did that create some difficulty in your hunt for a place to live?
What it did was it created more resolve for us that we're going to find us a place. regardless of the barriers. And we were fortunate that they had just built the apartment complex called North Winds now, which then was Arrowhead. And it was government. We had no problem. We rented, got us a place to live.
So they complied with the United States
Had
regulations
no
that
problems
said you
with-
cannot discriminate related to housing.
Yes, we applied, hadn't any problem whatsoever. And while we were living there, my dad and I talked, and we both said, why pay rent when spend your money on your own home? So that was the next obstacle. We knew we were going to have a hard time. So we applied for FHA loan. But we had to do this the exact same way. I let my wife Abby go and do all the paperwork, do everything. Once we got approved, then I came and signed the papers and we got the loan. I just, in the back of my mind, the gut feeling, I said, if I go in there with them, they're going to try to find some way to deny us, which we were lucky and blessed that we were able to get our home that we've been in now for almost for 44 years.
Yeah, you've got to feel very proud about being a homeowner,
Yes,
even during the adversities.
yes.
So you were able to get married. Now you found a home, and so did you have any children?
We have one child, Stacy, the only child we ever had. She's 48 years old now.
Did you experience any difficulties with the healthcare system being an interracial couple?
No, not actually. We didn't have any problems whatsoever that I can think of, no.
Very, very good. So are there any other, this is very powerful because it's very similar to what the Lovings experienced and the adversities. And so what we didn't talk about was the emotions that both you and your wife felt when you had to not be able to go together to do these things and to kind of think a lot about your strategy so that you would be successful. How did it make you feel as a couple and as an individual, as a Black man?
Well, first, it made us feel like we had a battle, a struggle, when the only thing that we wanted to do was live like everyone else. You know, the American dream. We wanted the American dream like everyone else. We wanted to work, raise a family, and contribute to society. But when you have to jump over each hurdle just to achieve the American dream, sometimes you do get down, sometimes you do get depressed. But I believe that with how I was raised, the support I had, not only from my parents, but from the group, the people that were my mentors, made me strong, because I would sit down and think about, no matter how hard I have it, I think about how hard my parents had it, how hard my neighbors had it, how hard my grandmother, how hard Mr. Reese Johnson and Miss Ida had it, how hard Miss Merpeggy had it, all the people in my neighborhood, because I was blessed to not only to have a strong support system. I think that helped us so much.
And it's very traditional in the African American culture to rally around your young ones, the young ones, to help support them to get on their feet. The old adage was, we always want more for our children than we had ourselves.
Yes.
And so it put you in a situation where you had to step up into big shoes because you were standing on the shoulders of those that came before us.
Yes.
So with all of that said and the adversities, today you hear the word white privilege, you hear the word institutional racism. And would you say that you experienced that in your interactions from 1976 when you got married? It sounded as if you had those encounters where you had to really kind of work to beat the system in order to get you.
We did. What happened though that helped us was, her father never had a problem with it, but her mother did. But then her mother made amends, and then she passed away. But I always felt good because her dad helped me get my credit started, because I would not have been able to get a simple little loan if it hadn't been for her father. He was an old farmer, customer of the banks, and he took me into the bank. I borrowed $125, and he co-signed to help me get credit.
For $125.
For $125.
And today that seems like such a minimum amount, but then it was a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It was a big deal to have a co-signer who was a white man.
I did.
That helped you establish your credit.
Step my credit, yes.
So, Mr. Green, I just want to say you have a lovely family. You have a lovely wife, and I know your wife really wished she could be here with you today. But,
Yes.
you know, although she's experiencing some health encounters, she has really rallied and feels really good about you doing this interview and sharing your story. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the community? Because what we want to do with this series of sharing our history is keeping history alive. Sometimes we assume that the way things are today was the way they always were, and there wasn't a struggle.
The main thing I want to say is I want to I don't know if I'm going to say pat my wife on the back, but brag on my wife, because she gave up everything. She gave up her family. She gave up everything for her love for me. Her family turned their backs on her, but she stood up. She held her head high. She carried herself with respect, and she stood by me. And not only did she stand by me, but my family and those that I consider my family, like Miss Crockett, like Miss Peggy Austin, like my grandmother, like Miss Ida Johnson, they all just enveloped her with love and took her in as their own.
And I'm made to understand, and just having experienced Abby's cooking, that many of the recipes that she uses today was because of this interracial relationship.
Yes.
That many of those recipes were transferred from, was it your grandmother or your mother?
We were so fortunate that when we got married, we lived with my grandmother, Miss Janana Green, one of the best cooks in this town. Worked with my wife, taught her recipes, and then my mother, Cora Green, another great cook, taught her all of her recipes. Then my aunt, Annie Taylor, taught her recipes. So I was blessed to know whatever I ate growing up, I still got to eat. They took her in and taught her so much about not only cooking, they taught her so much about raising our daughter. They taught her so much. And my wife she saw things through their eyes. She saw how the struggles that they had. And not only that made her more stronger also. And so I was blessed. People don't understand that the African American community is so strong with all of the hurdles and things that they have to overcome, and how the African community stands together stronger than people realize. And they're willing to envelop someone and take them among them and teach them and make them stronger.
So you would say there was some different cultural sharing and
Yes.
traditions that she was able to partake in because of the interracial relationship.
Because she would have never known.
She experienced it firsthand.
Yes.
Because she lived in a home with African Americans.
That's it, yes. Mm-hmm.
So your church attendance, you were able to attend your church, and you were accepted at the church. It was about the unity of that relationship.
Yes. And then, after we got married at our home, my parents' home, we went to church the following Sunday, and we've been members of Franklin Street ever since. I've worked in the church, and my wife has worked in the church also. And which the biggest blessing is, we both probably about 5 years ago, well, about 4 or 5 years ago, we both got baptized in Franklin Street. Not only my home church, but now it's been her home church for the last 48 years.
Just an observation, I noticed that a significant number of the community know you by name, and often I hear them call you by first name. And is it because of your that you've embedded yourself in the community, or how would you describe how you have been accepted in the community, not only among African Americans, but with a lot of the Caucasian race?
I believe a lot of it is because of they know what they get when they see me. I show respect, but I demand respect. I try to treat everyone the same. I've always done it ever since I've been a child. And Abby, it's the same way. I had a lot of young people come to me and talk to me about our experiences that they were going through, and they wanted to ask me questions. How did you all do this? A lot of the interracial couples used us as an example. And it's not something to want to brag about, but evidently we were doing something right, if that makes sense.
Yes. So, Mr. Green, we want to say thank you very much for contributing, being a major contributor to the series, Telling Our Stories, so that history can be passed on from generation to generation. Many times we don't know these experiences and life lessons until it's told and shared by the individual who actually encountered it. And so for you to be able to come forward today and share your story, we want to say thank you, because not everybody can see through the same lens that you and Miss Abby were able to see through. You experience it. So with that said, we want to say thank you.
And thank you too.
All right.